Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Season 3 of How Can It Be with Allie Johnson and
Kara Johnson.
Yeah, welcome, you guys.
Welcome.
Seriously.
We're feeling the holiday spirit, except for today we're not even wearing anything like Christmassy.
I'm sorry about that.
I would have expected you to be wearing like something like
I'm sorry. I
Christmas
feel like I've
sweater or
worn every
something.
single one of my Christmas sweaters here.
Oh.
So it's just kind of like I can't show much more of...
I feel like we had a bunch before.
I actually do have more, so that's
I have none. So.
Me lying, ultimately. So sorry about that.
That's okay.
If you guys are new here, this podcast is all about glorifying God in the everyday good, the bad, and the in-between. We start out every single episode the same way, just by sharing a little way that we saw Christ in our life the last week or so. We call these Jesus moments, and Kara gets to start. So why don't you just...
take it away?
Please.
I will. Okay, so this week is finals week, and it's absolutely destroying me, first of all. And I feel like I talk about school all the time on here, but guys, it's a big part of my life, so that's why I do.
True.
Anyway, so been really stressed, mostly for my chemistry class, absolutely destroying me. Last night, I went on campus to this one building where one of my friends had told me I could go there, and in the basement there are just empty rooms with a bunch of chalkboards, and you can just have it to yourself and write molecules all over the board and practice, you know?
Right. This sounds like my nightmare. This is what I know.
Great idea. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I went last night late, and I knew that the building closed at 11, but like they locked the doors, but you can stay in there and keep working, just like you just know that if you leave the building, you can't get back in, you know? And I'm like, that's chill. What I didn't know is that I went to the bathroom around 11:50 something.
Perfect.
And when I come back to my room, the door to the room is locked with all of my stuff inside of it. And I'm like, I instantly call my roommates, and I'm like, so take a look in here. That's my computer open on the desk in there. That's all of my stuff. And the door's locked. And they're like, that is not ideal. And I'm like, not ideal in the slightest. Anyway, I like almost have a mental breakdown about it because I was like needing to pull an all-nighter and be studying the whole night long for chemistry. And I'm like, don't even have any of my stuff. Can't get in the room. I'm scared.
Yeah.
Anyway. At the end of the day, it's the end of the day.
So true.
And everything's gonna be fine. But my friend was like, my roommate, Mia, she starts crying on the phone when I showed her. And I was like, girl, why are you crying? And she's like, this is just like not what you needed tonight. And I'm like feeling so sad for you. And I was like, you're so cute.
She's so cute. I love her.
And then she came and picked me up from campus, and I came back home, and she erased one of the whiteboards that we had in our house so that I could practice my molecules on this whiteboard, and everything ended up being fine. I took the exam today, pretty sure I like totally did terrible, but so glad it's over.
So true.
Okay, moral of the story was telling the whole story for mostly the part of my friend Mia. Mm-hmm. And just sometimes there's just something about when someone like cries for you, or knowing that you're loved, and especially when like there's so many stressful things going on in our lives all the time, and just like the fact that my mom texted me today right before I went into my exam and was like 8 minutes until you need to have to go into your exam, you've got this. And I'm like, she's such an angel.
And while you were taking your exam, she texted me and told me in detail what she's praying for you about.
She's so cute.
For the exam, and what I should pray for you about with the exam. I was like, okay, perfect.
No, she's perfect. And so I said to my roommates last night when I'm laying on the floor in my apartment when I had just gotten home, and I'm like, could not be less ideal right now. Uh-huh. And I was like, guys, my life may be in shambles lately, but at least I have good people in my life. And at least my friends cry for me. when they feel sad.
least.
And pick me up from campus so I don't have to walk home in the freezing cold by myself. Because I left my jacket in there too. I was like, this is just not ideal. Anyway, so I just think that, like we've talked before about how we've got a friend in Christ, and the little things matter so much, where it's like our lives may be in shambles, but especially when it's like the reason for the season right now.
Yeah.
And the Christmas season, and how we've talked about how there's things that are still stressful, like life just still gets stressful. And so even though we want it to be like jolly, good, like chill, wonderful, everything's beautiful, Christmas season, sometimes it just is still stressful because life is that way.
Yeah.
But when we can just remember that everything else might not be going the way that we want it to, but we know that we have good people. We know that we have a Savior and a Heavenly Father who love us and care about us, who cry for us when they're sad for us, and who are just like really have our back.
Yeah.
So that's like a moment about Jesus and how I love him. Jesus moment.
Perfect. I'm loving that. Thanks so much for sharing it. Seriously. I'm sorry, first of all, that life is just kind of bulldozing over you for the last like 5 months, I would say. And what I know is that's why I'm not in college. Thanks so much. Seriously, so sorry about that.
Hey, but guys, I've told Allie like 3 times the past week. I'm like, nothing makes me more excited than when this week's over and we're both going home to Vegas and we can just lay on the couch and watch a movie
and just
play
be with our family
and sleep.
It'll be
and
so
drink hot
good.
chocolate and get all snuggly and warm. Oh, I just want a nap.
Yeah. Don't mind her. Her eyes are going to be like this whole episode, so.
Yeah. I kept complaining before on the podcast all the time that I was like getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Guys, nothing beats 2 hours of sleep that I got last night.
Just, it's, your body like thinks that's just a nap. It's just waiting for the actual real night of sleep. That's what you know. When you wake up from a 2-hour sleep, it's not sleep. It's actually just a nap.
It is a nap. Okay.
Anyways, my Jesus moment. I, on Saturday night, was this Saturday night? Yep. Saturday night, went to Cam, my boyfriend's family Secret Santa party. And at the party, we watched a little Christmas cartoon movie. It's called Klaus. Have you ever seen it before?
No.
I thought that I had seen it before, so I was like going into it like getting ready, like prepping myself mentally to like fall asleep within the first like 15 minutes probably.
Yeah.
And instead I ended up just wide-eyed watching the entire thing and also crying in it. No problem. Oh, I've been crying in literally everything lately. Oh, things are so heartwarming for me. I can hardly even contain it. It gets so tricky. Anyway, but it's basically kind of like the background story of like how Santa came to be. So sweet. It's like a different take on like how I've ever heard of it before, but so cute. But in the movie, it's like essentially Cam was telling me, he's like, it's kind of like Emperor's New Groove takes like Christmas. And I'm like, okay. But then you watch it and you're like, okay, wait, it's this like big, huge, grumpy guy and then this like super entitled like twig of a man. And they like end up working together and like finding the true meaning for life, you know?
Yeah.
And during the movie, it says the old big guy says, during it, he says, a true selfless act always sparks another. Mm. And I just loved it so seriously much. So seriously much. So much. And it is just so true. Like, I think with the Christmas season, it's so important to remember that, like, a lot of the times, like, the number one priority we need to have is just, like, prioritizing each other, like, in whatever way that means. Like, for you, like, your roommates being willing to, like, leave when they're probably cold and tired and, like, leave their warm apartment to come and get you, you know? Yeah. And just, like, taking that extra time to do something outside of yourself, and how sweet that is, especially in moments where we feel like everything's so stressful and we can't get out of our own head. How sweet is that to be able to like take a step back and be like, oh, there's other people around me, other people who can relate to me and who love me, and I can love them and show up for them and serve them. And in doing that, I'll remember, oh, there's actually more than just right now. And I think that that's what Christmas has such a cool opportunity of doing for us. Like, depending on how we let the holidays affect us, we can either really like regroup and remember, like, and have gratitude and rejoicing in our hearts, or we can be super stressed and grouchy and mean. And it's like, a lot of us get to go home and be with our families. Like, are we going to project the stresses of our life on them the entire time that we're with them? Or are we going to take a second and pause and be grateful for the time that we get to go home and spend with our families? And it's kind of like, okay, why are we needing to be grateful for our families at all in the first place? And it's because God gave them to us. And I think while we receive so many gifts and all of those things during the holidays, it's important to remember that the number one gift was and always will be Christ. God is the ultimate gift giver. He gave his son.
Yeah.
And we're so lucky to be on the receiving end of that. But we don't want to get in the way.
Guys, Allie, we were talking about this like right before we started because our younger brother sent us this text that was hilarious. Because, background on this, some people's families, they send Christmas lists like to their parents. This is what I want for Christmas. My mom doesn't
refuses.
Like that. She likes to just
somehow figure out and read your mind of exactly what you want and give it to you. But she doesn't want you to ask
us to tell her.
She doesn't want you to ask for it directly, because then, heaven forbid, that wreck the surprise. Homegirl loves a surprise.
So anyway, what we're doing is we have our siblings group chat, and we've been like saying what we want for Christmas in the siblings group chat, so then our siblings can say to our mom what we want for Christmas.
So it's like, still, we're just telling her what we want, but no problem.
But, yes. Anyway, so hilarious today because our little brother goes, Allie, what do you want for Christmas? I haven't been paying a lot of attention here. And she told me that. I didn't see the text, and then she told me to look at it, and I just laughed and thought it was hilarious. But it just is fun to think about, like, the season of giving instead of receiving always. And, like, even though he wasn't paying attention in the chat, doesn't know what to give you, it's just the fact that he's a 16-year-old boy and is wanting to get his sister a present, you know?
Yeah.
And that Christ is truly the biggest gift of all. And if we, like, look at everything differently, where it's, like, instead of it being all stressful and, like, oh, I need to find presents and blah, 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 you know? Instead, we can just be, like, take things a little bit, like, calmer, I guess, and just think more about Jesus throughout everything that we're doing. Yeah. Because we can always relate it back to him.
Yeah. You guys, there's the sweetest poem ever. It's by this old-time English poet, and it goes like this. What can I give him poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. Yet what can I give him? Give him my heart.
Oh my gosh.
And I think that, like, that is so true and such an important focus for us to be redirecting towards, especially in moments like that. Like Coop, our brother, he texts and he's like, Allie, wait, what do you want for Christmas? And Christmas is truly, hang on, it's in 9 days. That's something to have a panic about for me and to feel a little bit stressed about. And it seems like Coop is also about to be feeling stressed about that because I don't know what to tell him that I want for Christmas, and I know that to be true. But I think that, like, ultimately, like, whatever he ends up giving me, like, even if he gives me nothing, like, I'll still love him because he's my brother. And I think that's the same principle, though, with God. He doesn't expect us to, like, be perfect at devoting our lives to him immediately. But he hopes that we could give him a sliver of our heart. We could direct a little bit of our focus to him and his son. And I think if we're going to do it at any time of year, now is a great time too.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe that's a good segue into your little thing you want to read.
Of course. Guys, yesterday one of my friends shared this story with me. Just like shared like a tiny little bit of it, and so then I looked it up and I was like feeling like it's obviously worthy to share. So that's why I'm gonna share it. Anyway. Okay, it's about this guy and his name is, wish I knew.
So true.
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow.
Oh.
And he wrote the song, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. Hopefully y'all have heard it. Here's the thing, I didn't know the story behind it. It's a great one. First of all, Henry, this guy, he has really quite a hard life. He has 6 children, okay? Then his wife dies. Guess how she dies? Because her dress catches on fire. And he was like asleep. And then sees her like wakes up to her like burning to death. And tries to extinguish the fire with like a rug. And then with his own body. And then he gets burned. And then she dies. And then he deals with terrible burns for the rest of his life as well. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So stay away from the flames.
Yeah. So this guy loses his wife, has 6 children. Okay. The oldest of his children goes to war. He gets news that let's see. Okay, let me just read this part, guys. Come on. On Friday, December 25th, 1863, Henry Longfellow, as a 57-year-old widowed father of 6 children, the oldest of which had been nearly paralyzed as his country fought a war against itself, wrote a poem seeking to capture the dissonance in his own heart and the world he observes around him that Christmas Day. He heard the bells ringing in Cambridge and the singing of peace on earth, goodwill to men. But he observed the world of injustice and violence that seemed to mock the truthfulness of this optimistic outlook. The theme of listening recurs throughout the poem, eventually leading to a settledness of confident hope even in the midst of bleak despair, as he recounts to himself that God is alive and that righteousness shall prevail. Isn't that beautiful? And then listen to this. Like I've heard the song millions of times and I'm always like, I heard the bells on Christmas Day. But there's like a part in it that after I knew that and then was listening to it, I was like, oh my gosh. He says, it was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. So he's like this guy who's suffered things like all of us suffer, terrible things. And he's feeling really quite like trouble in his soul because it's Christmas Day that he writes this song. And he hears the bells, but he's like, where does this add up? Because I'm feeling despair, and he's feeling like there is no peace on earth.
Yeah.
And then he says that the bells were even more louder after he felt that way.
Yeah.
And then he says that it rang true, that God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. And so it's like, even though all of these things are happening, even though there's trials and tribulations and heartache, he's like, he can still see, just like how it was saying before, right here that it was saying, leading to a settledness of confident hope, even in the midst of bleak despair, as he recounts to himself that God is alive and that righteousness shall prevail. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to like keep at the center always. And it's a struggle, and it's a daily struggle for all of us. But even when it's like Christmas Day and maybe we're struggling, maybe we have hard things that are going on in our lives, that we can hear the bells, that we can remember that even though all of those things are happening, Christ has made everything possible, that the righteous shall prevail, that there is hope, even though it might feel like there isn't sometimes.
Oh, I love that. That seriously is it's so real. It's such a real story too though. Like he bowed his head and accepted the fact that like there is no peace on earth. And I think that sometimes, especially in the Christmas season, when we're supposed to be cheery and having all these like awesome and fun feelings and everyone is supposed to be happy, like in the times where we're supposed to feel a surplus of love and joy, there's oftentimes outside circumstances that prevent us from experiencing that level of joy. And that's the thing is, the level of joy that we feel in our life has little to do with the actual circumstances and things that are going on in our lives, and everything to do with who we direct our focus to, which is Christ.
Yeah.
And this Christmas season, I think that's what's so important, is remembering him and remembering that he is the promise of peace on earth. And though there's plenty of times where it feels like the world promotes anything other than the idea and the feeling of peace, it's so important to remember the promise of the Prince of Peace and the fact that he's already been born. He's already completed the task of our salvation. All we have to do is look towards him and rejoice in him.
Yeah. I just was thinking also, I think this Christmas is going to be 4 years from the Christmas that our dad on Christmas morning of like 2020, he was eating our big Christmas breakfast and couldn't swallow the food and ended up going to the hospital. And him and my mom already knew that he was diagnosed with cancer, but us kids didn't know yet. And he was admitted to the hospital that morning and stayed in the hospital
for 9 days.
And that's how we found out that our dad had cancer, and it was Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And I think it's just something really real about life also, is that things like that just happen. Like,
yep.
Even though it's Christmas Day, people die on Christmas, or people receive terrible news, or there's heartache and there's hard things that happen.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot of times. In the midst of happy things, there are also going to be sad things.
Yeah.
And I think it's, even though it's hard, it's always like also our choice to try to like look past that and get past it and look for the joy in the Christmas season, because we could be like, okay, Christmas sucks. That's the day we found out that our dad had cancer and everything sucks, and now every Christmas we're going to be upset about it, you know? But instead, we enjoy Christmas with our family and the traditions that we have with our family, and we mourn the fact that our dad isn't with us. And all of those things are good and healthy and needed.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be sad too. But that we just can remember that everything is possible, that we can be with him again, that there is hope. And that's the most important thing, that throughout all of it, that we maintain that spirit of hope, because that's the whole meaning of why Christ even came.
Yeah. I just want to end today's little episode with a little Christmas monologue that was written by a little Christian music group. It's called King and Country. And I feel like it just ties everything we've talked about today together really nicely, and honestly fills me with so much hope and like happy anticipation for Christmas. And just, I feel like is a good regroup for everybody, especially the ones of us who feel like we're in the trenches a little bit right now. So here it is. It goes like this. It's remarkable to think that a baby boy born in a stable, no prestige, no privilege, no social media or social status, political campaigns or private airplanes, and yet he turned BC into AD. He flipped the world on its head. He's the most famous name around the globe, inspired the most read book ever written. He reconnected us to heaven and in turn brought heaven down to earth. And now he offers us redemption, a fresh start, freedom, so that we can hold our heads high and march through this life, knowing that we are never alone, that every woman and man, boy and girl, to all of us who feel like we have nothing left, nothing to bring, that we can know that God is smiling at us, that he's loving us, that we are enough. So light up that Christmas tree, stand under the mistletoe, surround yourself with the ones that you love the most, and together, let's celebrate the greatest news this world has ever known. So maybe we could do that. We could talk a little bit about Christ. We can emphasize the reason for the season. And
look for the little symbols. Like, I love that it says light up the Christmas tree.
yeah.
And just look for light in this season. Because there's plenty of it.
Yeah. Because after all, he is the light of the world.
So true. So true.
Anyways.
So light up that Christmas tree.
Stand under the mistletoe. I glitched while I said that a little. But do it still.
And remember what Allie has written on her shirt, which says, perhaps you were created for such a time as this.
Maybe.
True.
Yeah.
So let's make the most of it, guys. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We love you. He loves you more.
Bye.
Bye.